Alright guys, I am back again with another deck profile for Cardfight Vanguard Deer Days on Nintendo Switch. This time we got version 1 of my Lyrical Monasterio Lilfa deck. So of course version 1 is everything through the first additional card pass, so through D Lyrical Booster 3. And this deck focuses on filling up your board with grade 2 or higher units, and then using Lilfa's skills to give all those units the ability to boost, as well as bouncing them back to your hand and calling them again in order to gain extra attacks, Bermuda Triangle style. So as always, we will be going through the deck real fast, and then we'll show it off in one card fight. So starting first with the Ride deck, we of course have our grade 0 starter, which is Super Large Scale Newbie Lilfa. So when it's rolled upon, if you win second, draw a card. Standard D-Series starter, like always. And yes, Lilfa is a giantess. So next up for the grade 1, we have Extra Large Room Lilfa. So her auto ability says when this unit is rolled upon by a grade 2 with Lilfa in its card name, choose up to one grade 2 or greater card from your hand, call it to your back row center rearguard circle, and it gets boost until end of turn. And if you called a card, draw a card. So this skill is basically just a free +1 to your hand, as long as you have a grade 2 or greater to call to your back row center. So very nice skill. It does make your Vanguard attack pretty big for that turn too, since you're calling a grade 2 or 3 to your back row and giving it the ability to boost. So your center column should be swinging for pretty good numbers on turn 2, as well as getting an extra card into your hand. So, very nice skill overall. Next up, for the grade 2, we have Best Love Moment Lilfa. So, her auto ability says when this unit is rolled upon by a grade 3 with Lilfa in its card name, choose one of your grade 2 or greater rearguards and you may return it to your hand. So just a simple bounce skill, not anything real special here. Usually you're just going to use that to bounce back whatever you called off of the grade 1 Lilfa's skill to your back row center. However, the skill is nice since it does let you potentially reuse some of your on-call skills, since quite a few of our rearguards in this deck do have abilities that trigger when you call them to rearguard. So you can potentially get to use one of those skills again. So then lastly for the grade 3, we have Highest Dreamer Lilfa. So first off, she has an activate ability that says once per turn you can Soul Blast 1, and all of your grade 2 or greater rearguards get boost until end of turn. So this is a very important skill for this deck. It's the only way to give all of our grade 2 or higher units boost, which without that they're not going to be doing much in your back row. So definitely helpful in getting your attacks up to some much better numbers. And then she also has her auto ability that says at the end of the battle this unit attacked, if you have 3 or more grade 2 or greater rearguards in your back row, you can counterblast 1 to choose a rearguard each from your front row and back row and return them to your hand. If you return 2 cards, choose up to one grade 3 card from your hand and call it to an open rearguard circle. So this ability lets you bounce 2 of your rearguards and then call 1, so it does give you a 4th attack every turn. Now, this ability triggers at the end of the battle where Lilfa attacked. So usually the best way to handle this is to attack with one of your grade 3 rearguards unboosted, to just poke your opponent's Vanguard or take out a rearguard, whichever you would rather do at the moment. But anyway, attack with it unboosted, then attack with Lilfa boosted by whoever, and then at the end of that battle when you resolve this skill, you can bounce the rearguard that already attacked, as well as the back row center rearguard that boosted Lilfa, and then you can call a grade 3 back to your front row and allow it to attack boosted, as well as still having another standing rearguard column that you could have potentially stacked triggers on that you got off of Lilfa's drive checks. So that's the sequence I usually follow with this deck in order to maximize my attacks, since this deck can be pretty susceptible to getting screwed over by your opponent checking damage triggers. and that way is usually the most efficient way to minimize that risk. But it is a good ability, giving you that 4th attack, also letting you bounce 2 of your rear guards back. So again, you can potentially reuse those on-call skills, as well as leaving you with at least 1 empty rear guard circle on the board. So, you know, if you're playing against a control deck and your board gets wiped, you can save at least 1 card that way. Now, this skill does require you to have your back row full of grade 2 or higher units in order to be able to use it at all. And obviously you need your front row full as well in order to get all of your attacks in. So you do need to fill up your entire field in order to take full advantage of Lilfa. So it is a bit piece reliance in that regard. But if you can get that field filled up and you can get your attacks to go off in sequence properly, then she can have a pretty impressive offense, especially on a Persona ride turn. So that is the ride deck. Moving on to the main deck. First off, for the grade 3s, we of course have our 3 additional copies of Highest Dreamer Lilfa, the LSR alternate art with her in her bikini. So next up, we have 4 copies of Passionate Devotee Citride. So she has an auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle from hand, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Lilfa in its card name, until end of turn, this unit gets power plus 5,000, and if it was placed during your main phase, you can Soul Blast 2 and draw a card. So this is one of the best units in the deck. It is an 18k body every time you call it until end of turn, and if you call it during your main phase, you can also Soul Blast 2 to get that extra draw. We do need quite a bit of draw power in this deck to make sure we can get enough normal units into our hand to fill up our field, of course. So that extra draw can be very important. She does use quite a bit of soul, and of course Lilfa's first skill is a Soul Blast as well. But we have quite a few cards in this deck to keep that soul fueled up. So being a draw engine and a good beat stick for the deck does make this card very important. Next up, we have 3 copies of Splash Delight Persis. So her auto skill says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a Vanguard with Lilfa in its card name, you soul charge 1 and this unit gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. So this is another very helpful card for the deck. It is a soul charge, like I just mentioned. We do use quite a bit of soul with this deck. And if you run out of soul and you can't use Lilfa's first ability, then obviously your back row won't be able to boost anything that turn. So helping to keep that soul fueled up is very vital for this deck. Also, unlike some of the other on-call abilities in this deck, she doesn't require a grade 3 Vanguard or being called during the main phase. So she is one of the best targets to call off of the grade 1 Lilfa's skill, since you can still take full advantage of her ability on turn 2. And since she gains that extra 2k power, she will be a 15k base, so she can make magic numbers if she's in the same column as another grade 3. So all in all, just a very useful card for the deck. So next we have 3 copies of Detour Together LV. So first off, she has a continuous ability when she's on your front row rearguard circle that says all of your rearguards with different card names as this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So a pretty decent protection ability. If your opponent's playing a control deck and they want to pick off your rearguards, they got to get rid of LV before they can touch anybody else. That does only work on front row rearguard circle, so if you put her in the back to be a booster, then that skill will not be active. So do keep that in mind. But you kind of want her on the front row anyway, in order to take advantage of her second auto ability that says when this unit's attack hits a Vanguard, you may counter charge 1. So another good pressure ability for this deck. It does have to hit in order to get that counter charge, but it is the only counter charge engine in the deck, which the deck isn't as counterblast heavy as it is soul blast heavy, but we do still have quite a few counterblasting skills. So having a counter charge option is still very nice, even if it does have to hit in order to go off. So then lastly for the grade 3s, we have 2 copies of Early Afternoon Elegance Racleen. So her continuous ability says during your turn, this unit cannot attack the Vanguard, and this unit gets power plus 10,000. So she's a 23k body during your turn, but she can't attack the Vanguard. However, with Lilfa skill giving her boosts, she makes a very nice 23k booster to just sit in your back row. So you do want to avoid putting her in the front row since she can't do much up there. She still can't attack into a rear guard, but not being able to attack into the Vanguard is a very huge detriment. So it's best to just sit her in your back row and let her be a giant booster, making one of your other attacks a lot more threatening. It's very nice to put her behind LV since you want her on hit skill to go off, so making her hit a really big number can make that a little bit more likely. So if you want to replace this with something else you can, but I do like just having it at a 2 of in order to make those big numbers. So that is all of the grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we have 4 copies of Almost Late Prufla. So her auto ability says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Lilfa in its card name, choose a grade 2 or less normal unit with Lilfa in its card name from your drop, and you may put it into your soul. If you put it into your soul, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So this card fills a very similar role to Persis. She can be a 15k body on your board, again helping hit magic numbers when she's in the same column as a grade 3. And she also lets you recycle your ride line Lilfas that you soul blasted out from your drop back into your soul, so you can soul blast them again for some of your other costs. So again, she does the same job as Persis, refilling your soul and being a 15k on your board. Which, again, keeping that soul fueled up is very important, especially if you end up using Citrede's skill quite a bit. So, very important card for the deck. Next, we have 3 copies of Favorite One Fluidity. So, her auto ability says when your other rearguard is returned to hand by your grade 3 or greater Vanguard's ability, you can counterblast one and put this unit into soul, to draw a card and choose up to 1 grade 3 card from your hand and call it to an open rearguard circle. So this is a pretty powerful card for the deck. It can give you a 5th attack every turn. However, I am just running 3 copies of it because generally I like to be a bit more selective of when I actually use this card. Most of the time I like saving it for a Persona Ride turn or a big push turn when I'm trying to go for the win, since one, it uses up another counterblast, and if you use it too often, you can run into resource problems. Another thing, again, like I mentioned earlier, this deck can very easily be screwed by your opponent checking damage triggers. So if you use this on a non-Persona Ride turn and your opponent gets a damage trigger, then you can end up wasting resources if you use this skill to call another rearguard, and it can't really hit into anything because your opponent has stack power on their Vanguard. So you should be a little bit more selective about when you use it, but if you do use it at the proper time, like when you have a Persona Ride boost to your front row, you can get 5 attacks in. It is a ±0 since she puts herself into your soul, but then draws a card to replace herself. So it ends up being just a counterblast 1 for an extra soul and an extra attack. So can be very useful. You do have to call a grade 3 off of her ability, just like with Lilfa's skill. So you do want to make sure that you have another grade 3 in your hand ready to call into the spot that she was in order to get that extra attack. Now you do also have the option of using her from your back row if you want to boost with her for your first rearguard attack before you attack with Lilfa, and then bounce the one in front of her with Lilfa's skill, and then use Fluidity's skill to put herself into soul and call another booster in order to just make that column bigger. So you'd still only be getting 4 attacks that turn, but all of them will be able to be boosted. That is also an option. but again, that's using up resources just to basically gain a little extra power. So, like I said, it is important to be careful with your timing about when you use this to make sure that you can actually get the most out of it. But when used at the proper time, it can be a very helpful card for this deck. So then lastly, for the grade 2s, we have 4 copies of Hoppin' Stellar Melty. So she does have her friend continuous ability, which is completely irrelevant in this deck. She is only being played for her second auto ability that says, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle during your main phase, you can counterblast one to choose up to one card with grade equal to or less than your Vanguard from your hand and call it to rearguard circle. And if you called a card, draw a card. So she's just a call one and a draw one for a counterblast one. So another good draw engine for the deck between her and Citride. It is very important to draw a lot of cards in order to fill up your field. So having her as another draw engine is very helpful. And of course you can bounce her back to your hand with Lilfa's ability and potentially reuse this skill as well. So just a nice generic draw engine card for this deck. So that's all the grade 2s, moving on to the grade 1s. Actually, the only grade 1s we're running in the main deck are our Sentinels. So we do have our 3 copies of Unwelcoming and Private Deciel, just your standard Perfect Guard. And of course 1 copy of the Nationless Blitzorder Elementaria Sanctitude, which you can play without paying the cost if your opponent's Vanguard has triple drive. So that's all the grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, we just have our trigger lineup, which is 6 crits, 5 draws, 4 heals, and 1 over. This is one of the rare decks where I am running more than 4 draw triggers, and the reason for that is actually the same reason I did it in my Felty Rosa deck, because if you're using Fluidity, you can actually end up in a position where you have no standing front row rear guards when you check into some crit triggers, in which case those crits are completely wasted. So by putting in a little bit more draw power, you can have some triggers that are more universally useful. But anyway, starting first with the crit triggers, we do have 4 copies of Precious Tune Edwidge. Crit with a skill, at the end of the battle it boosted, you can put it into your soul to choose one of your units, and it gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. So, unless you're using this really early game, this skill actually conflicts with the grade 3 Lilfa, since you have to have a full back row of grade 2 or higher units, when she's obviously grade 0, so that would actually shut your Vanguard skill down. So using the skill crits is absolutely not necessary for this deck, even though the extra soul can be helpful. So if you'd rather replace this with one of the vanilla crits just because, you can feel free to do so. I'm just running this at 4 of just because I feel like it more than anything. You don't really end up using the skill that often. Additionally, we do have 2 copies of Wings Dancing in the Blue Skies Antia, which is just one of the vanilla crits. Next, for the draws, we have 4 copies of Transparent Snowy Night Baratois. So, draw with a skill. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, get shield plus 5,000. So your 10k shield draw trigger. And then additionally, I have 1 copy of Thick and Fluffy Siesta Hilma. Just your vanilla draw to add that extra draw power. So then next for the heals, we have 4 copies of Peaceful Garden Anika. So like always, if you want to use any of the effect heals, you can feel free to do so. And then lastly, we have our 1 over trigger, which is Greatest Star Esperanza. So her additional effect during this fight, you get during your turn, all of your rear guards get power plus 10,000. So grants skill to the fighter, powering up all your rear guards for the rest of the game, which is very helpful in this deck, especially since you're getting multiple rear guard attacks And you definitely want those to be able to hit for as high as possible. So that is the deck. So we will go ahead and have our one fight with it. And we'll fight Tamari this time. And we will be going first. So we'll discard that draw to ride, and then just end our turn. And she did not get any grade 1s, so she had to rest her Vanguard to play her prison. So she will not get to attack this turn. So we will discard. And we'll drop Raclean, I guess, to ride. And the grade 1 Lilfa will let us superior call one from our hand. So we will call Persis to back row center, who gains boost and lets us draw. And then her skill will let us soul charge and gain 2k. So then we can attack. And we get a heal trigger that is wasted, unfortunately. And she gets a heal that is also wasted. So now we gotta imprison one from our hand, so we will imprison Melty. And Cuff Spring makes us imprison another from our hand, so we'll do Fluidity this time. But we get to draw to replace her. So we'll let that one through. And we get a draw trigger, nice. And we'll let that one through. She gets a crit trigger, so that attack will go through, and it'll be 2 damage. But our last trigger won't be able to hit us. Oh, we got a heal, nice. And we actually get this one. So we only end up at 2 damage this time. So we will discard one of these heals to ride highest Dreamer Lilfa. And grade 2 Lilfa will let us bounce Persis back to our hand. So we will go ahead and call Melty over here and use her ability to counter blast. And superior call one from our hand, so we will call Citride. And we'll get to draw off a Melty skill and then Citride's skill. We'll give her an extra 5k and let us Soul Blast 2. And we can draw again. So we will go ahead and call Prufla to our back row center, which will trigger her ability, letting us put one of those Lilfas from our drop back into our soul, and give her 5k. And then we can call Persis back again as well, And her on-call skill lets us soul charge again and gain 2k. And we will go ahead and use the Prison's ability to Soul Blast 1. And call 1 unit from jail, so we'll call FuRyu back out to our board. We will have our power reduced, thanks to Perio Turquoise, but that's fine. So then we can use Lilfa's skill to Soul Blast again. And give all of our grade 2 or higher units boost until end of turn. So I believe we are good to go. So we will go ahead and attack with Citride first, not boosted this time. And she guards. So then we can attack with a Lilfa, boosted by Prufla. So then Lilfa's ability will let us counter blast. And we can return a front and back row unit to our hand, so we will return Prufla and Citride. And then we can Superior Call a grade 3, so we'll call Citride right back to our front row. And this will trigger Citride's ability again to gain 5k. And we can't use the draw skill because it's not the main phase. But we can go ahead and attack with FuRyu, boosted by Persis. And she gets a heal trigger when she does get. But then we can attack with Citride. So then Seraph Snow will imprison 2 of our rear guards. And she does get to fill up her field with that Superior Call. So I'll let that one through. And she has triple drive with that, so I think I'll go ahead and perfect guard that one. And we will discard FuRyu. She gets another heal trigger when she also gets. And I think I'm going to go ahead and let that through, just to have the damage. And we get a crit trigger that is wasted. Alright, so now we can Persona Ride. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Prison's second ability to counter blast. And we can call 2 units from our prison. So we will call out FuRyu and Citride. So we'll put them in our front row. And both their powers will be weakened by Perio Turquoise. And then we can go ahead and call Prufla to our back row center. And use her skill to put Lilfa from the drop into Soul and gain 5k. And then Lilfa's ability will let us Soul Blast it right back out to give all our units boost. So then we will go ahead and attack with Citride first, not boosted. And then we will attack with Lilfa next, since we only have 1 counter blast. And we get a draw trigger, so we will give that power to Melty. Oh, and we get a crit, nice. So crit to the Vanguard, and give that power to Melty as well. And she gets a crit. So now Lilfa's ability lets us counter blast and bounce our 2 units again. And then we Superior call a grade 3 from our hand, so this time we'll call LV. So then we'll have LV attack, boosted by Melty. And she lets it through. And she gets another crit, but since LV's attack hit, we will get to use her skill to countercharge 1. And then we can still attack with FuRyu, boosted by Persis. And I think I'm actually going to pick off our rear guard here. And she does get her grade 4 ride. So now we have to imprison 2 from our hand, soul, and rear guards. So let's see, we will imprison Prufla and we'll go with that draw as well, I guess. And we only had to imprison 1 from our rear guard thanks to Elvi's ability, because she's the only one that can be chosen. And then we also send 2 from our soul. And she gets to imprison 1 from the top of our deck, which was our Persona Ride. So let's see, we will go ahead and let that one through. So we'll guard this one with those, and that'll be, what, 2 to pass? So that should be enough. She gets a crit trigger. She does stack it on her rear guard. And a draw as well. If she had put those on her Vanguard, she could have got us there. But now we will perfect guard that one. And we will discard that crit. Alright, so now we can Persona Ride once again. So I will go ahead and use the Prison's ability to Soul Blast one. And we will call out one of the Pruflas. And then her skill will let us get that soul right back. As well as gain 5k. So then I will go ahead and call Citride. And use her skill to gain 5k. And we will go ahead and Soul Blast 2 to get that draw, why not? And I'm going to call Prufla from my hand over top of Persis. Just to use her skill to get that one soul back and gain 5k. So then we can use Lilfa's Activate ability to Soul Blast and give our units boost. So I believe we are all set up and ready to go. So we will attack with Citride first. Not boosted. And then we will also attack with FuRyu, not boosted. So then we'll attack with Lilfa, boosted by Prufla. And she perfect guards. And we get a heal trigger, which we do get, so we heal 1. And we will give that power to Melty. And now Lilfa's skill will let us Counter Blast. And bounce our 2 rear guards. And then we can Superior Call Citride back to the front, which will trigger Citride's ability to gain 5k. As well as triggering FuRyu's ability twice, which we can only use once. But we will use it to Counter Blast and put her into Soul to draw and Superior Call another grade 3 from our hand. So we will go ahead and call LV. So then we can attack with LV, boosted by Prufla. And she guards. But she's got no more cards in her hand. So we can attack with Citride, boosted by Melty. And she's gonna have to let this through. And we got her with that one. So there you go, that was my Lilfa deck. Pretty fun deck. So I will be back soon with more deck profiles. I believe next up I'll be doing Medio, yet another lyrical deck. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.